So a key belief that I have on this channel, I've mentioned it in the past, is that any watch purchase nowadays is a luxury purchase. You do not need to own a watch in today's day and age. And if you're able and fortunate enough to buy one, I think that is in itself a luxury. Now, with that being said, I think there is a spectrum of luxury within watches, and what we will relatively classify as luxurious usually goes to a higher end. We're looking at more high-end finishing. We're looking at elegant case presentations, dial finishing, more bespoke levels of presentation with movements and extra steps in assembly. But today what we're gonna be looking at is what are some of the watches that maybe aren't at these premium, relatively speaking, luxury price tags that just look luxurious and more expensive than they actually are. That's what we're gonna be doing in this video, looking at some micro brands as well as some major brands to go along with it. Now, we have tackled this subject in the past, but it was several years ago, and we're gonna be doing this again now. There's so many new watches on the market. None of the watches that were mentioned in that previous video from several years ago are going to be mentioned. This is gonna be all fresh new takes on this subject for this video. As I mentioned, relatively speaking, when we're talking about watches, what can be seen as being at this point of luxury, it's a weird middle ground. So we're going to be looking at mostly watches under $1,000, some exceptions. If we are extending beyond that price point, I wanna give reason to why that might be the case, whether it is some of the finishing and presentation or added complication. That is what we're looking for here, and I'll try to guide us through that and why I'm making some of these decisions throughout. So before we jump in, I'm gonna be coming to New York City for an exclusive event with NOMOS Lounge. This is a short evening event we have on July 16th and July 17th. At this event, I will of course be there. We'll have plenty of other NOMOS models to shop and take a look at, including a final set of the NOMOS World Timer limited editions released at Watches and Wonders this year. So if you've been wanting to get your hands on these, this is going to be your last opportunity to do so. It's only available to those that come to this event. So if you want to take part in this, it will be in Soho in a really cool speakeasy loft type of environment with NOMOS. Fill out that form down below. Limited capacity for this, and look forward to seeing you there. So for the sake of this video, I wanna start with some micro brands just to get some different approaches to our list here today. And I think micro brands, generally speaking, are really good at this idea. Because they have less overhead involved, they can potentially make more things happen with less and position it at more advantageous prices as a result of that. So the first brand that we have here is Cincinnati Watch Company. So this is in my home state of Ohio, but in the other part of the state, down in the southwest portion of Ohio, started as a company that really resurged this idea around watchmaking in this area. So if you know the history of Cincinnati as a watchmaking hub, you might be familiar with the Gruen brand. So Gruen was famously known for watches like the Precision, which also was worn by James Bond, Sean Connery specifically, in the 1962 film, Dr. No. Cincinnati Watch Company nowadays has several different approaches across their line. Now this is their Guild Mechanical, so more traditional in its presentation. And we'll mention why I think it deserves to be on this list. But I think you also need to understand a bit of the backstory around this brand. So one of the co-owners is Jordan Ficklin. He is a WOSTEP graduate and former executive director of the American Watchmakers and Clockmakers Institute, also known as the AWCI. He was teaching watchmaking at the AWCI and now has taken on an ownership position at the Cincinnati Watch Company. So you're getting this level of expertise and insight from their watches. The company is producing their watches with these classical design cues assembled and tested right in Ohio. Now I mentioned this Guild Mechanical deserves to be on this list, and I think there are a few reasons why I think it has this elevated presentation compared to its price. You're talking about the $600 price range, so pretty well positioned for all the things packed into the overall package. You have this ornate presentation, Art Deco style, Arabic hour markers. The textured dial surface is also very nice under close inspection. You have an Elabore grade Solita movement on the inside, and for a price point like this, to find any Swiss mechanical movement nowadays is pretty tough. An elevated grade at that, very nice to see. 38mm finely finished case. And I think adding all of these little details about who's behind the watch, this element of assembly in the US, Jordan Ficklin, and all these things packaged together create a package that I would say definitely punches above its weight. I know some people don't like when you say punching above its weight. It's like one of those cliche type of terms in watches, but I think it's true in this case. So we go from the US, now I want to go look at Norway. This is a brand that got on my radar last year. I really liked it in the hands when I first was able to try one on. The finishing was phenomenal on the dials, very intricate, reminded me of some Grand Seiko-esque style dials. Cases also well positioned. This is Norwegian brand Straum with the Jan Mayen. So these watches come in 38.7 millimeter case diameter, more of this everyday style watch with 100 meters of water resistance, 45.7 millimeters lug to lug, and 11.5 millimeters of thickness. And on the inside, a La Jouperet G101 with a sapphire crystal on top. So this company was founded in 2017 by two industrial designers from Oslo, Norway. The Jan Mayen is a well-sized integrated stainless steel sports watch. It's made in Switzerland with several unique dial textures and colors to choose from. The dials themselves are sculpted in CAD software and are formed into stamping tools that are then CNC machined. Final dials are going to be finished in lacquer with different colorways inspired by nature, with this directly being inspired by the unpopulated Jan Mayen Island. For these watches, you also get an optional machine ratcheting clasp with 4 millimeters of micro adjustment. These are positioned more at the higher end, but I think the reason why I wanted to include these watches is when I had these on my wrist for the first time, I was really impressed with just the presentation, what was being offered up here, but especially the dials. I think these are some of the best dials in their price segment and look much more expensive than you would expect. So we've talked about this French micro brand before, mostly because of their dive watches and more tool-oriented watches that they have on offer, but this is a completely different approach. This is the Serica 1174 Parade. A watch that you don't expect when you think of this brand, but when they released this, I believe it was last year, one that immediately turned heads, and it was different. It had a case silhouette that was unlike many in the industry, especially for this brand specifically. You have a case diameter 35 millimeters, thickness of 8.3 millimeters, and lug to lug of 41 millimeters with water resistance of 100 meters and a manual Soprod M100 movement on the inside to fit within that relatively small case shape. So this is a striking dress watch from the French micro brand that has quickly taken off for more of those retro tool watches. They're calling this the stadium case shape, and it recalls a lot of vintage Cartier Benoirs or Patek Philippe ellipses. It's this fusion of watchmaking with jewelry that feels more former than the latter. The 8.6 millimeter case height is well within dress watch conventions, but the stainless steel case features a rather prominent step bezel and case side details that evoke the sportier side of Patek designs. You have intriguing dial textures showing off the S-curve engraved pattern, punctuated by tiny spherical indices and rendered in either satin black or this soft brass tone. The dome sword hands are mirror polished, and then there's no second hand to interrupt the aesthetic. A little bit less motion happening on this dial overall as a byproduct of the absence of a second hand, but this subtle little details throughout I think add so much more to the package. So jumping back down closer to the $700 price range, this is another micro brand that has started to get more attention as of late. It is known as Dennison, and this is the ALD. Basically, the way to summarize these watches on the short is that they have unconventional cushion style cases with stone dials. So case diameter, 33.5 millimeters, thickness of just over 6 millimeters, so relatively thin. A lot of that is coming from the Swiss quartz Ronda movement on the inside. Some people might be hard on these with having a quartz movement at this price, but I think there's a lot of other features that we can bring up here that allow them to be a little bit less conventional in what they're going for. Now, we've seen a lot of stone dials as of lately. It seems like there is a bit of a trend around stone dials, but I love the look. You have aventurine, malachite, and other stones that you can choose from for these watches under $1,000, which make them some of the more attainable pieces in general in that regard for that style. Although there's no direct affiliation, this brand was resurrected from the past. So Dennison was a prominent case maker founded back in 1874 by Erin Dennison. And the ALD is a tribute to that name. So Dennison produced cases for Rolex, Omega, IWC, Jaeger-LeCoultre, Waltham, and Zenith, among many others in the industry. So the legitimacy is there with this name, and this is really aimed to honor many of those designs of the past. Now, some people might be pretty hard on these having a quartz movement on the inside, but I just think these are attractive looking, and you're also getting an unconventional case silhouette in the process. So now we transition to some more mainstream brands, and for the first brand on the list, we have Seiko with the Presage Cocktail Time. We did mention the Cocktail Time previously, but we're gonna make an exception here looking at the 38.5mm because this is a completely different dial presentation compared to other Cocktail Times that we've talked in the past. So what is the difference here outside of the dimensions, which dimensions your 38.5mm in diameter, 11.8mm in thickness, and lug to lug of 45.4mm, while still getting that 50 meters of water resistance and the 4R35 on the inside with Harlex glass on top. The difference here is going to be the dial texture. So instead of that fine sunray rib finish that you saw on the 40mm Cocktail Times, this has more of a traditional rose engine look to a guilloche pattern. Now it's obviously not done through traditional methods of guilloche. This is a stamp process, but we're talking about under $500 for these watches. These are all inspired by classic cocktails. You have Negroni and Mojito. There's other ones to choose from as well, but really nice finishing on the dials. The hands are also going to have these nice touches of reflective details, applied indices, and there's a reason why these are perennial favorites among collectors. They just look really good for the price. So now we look at a watch that is going to be the most expensive on the list here today, I believe. This is the Longines Master Collection 190th anniversary. So the reason why I wanted to include this watch on this list, Longines, absolutely a luxury brand, right at that entry point of what the industry would call traditional luxury. If you're in commercial retail in the luxury industry, usually they'll say around $3,000 or so is where you start to see that cutoff. That's usually more of how the industry looks at it. I think as a collector, it's not as black and white as that, but Longines is a perfect point of value in this intersection of attainability with luxury. And I think this is one of these watches that's in the weeds, if you know, you know, that really delivers on this idea. So 38.5mm with that diameter, 10.2mm in thickness, and a lug to lug just under 45mm with the L893 movement on the inside. But why is this watch included on this list when it retails over $2,600? Well, it's this 190th anniversary edition that has this unbelievable detail with these dials. You have a small seconds display, but these engraved Breguet style numerals at this price is just beautiful. This is something that's usually going to be showcased on watches maybe 5 to 10x the price. So to see this and under close inspection, even if you got close up with the macro lens, you could see the work for yourself. Now this is probably being achieved by some machine elements that are allowing this, but it doesn't get in the way of what the end result is. It's absolutely fantastic when you're looking at it up close and looks the part, elevated with its finishing, especially at this price point. You're getting a silicone balance spring on the inside, 72 hours of power reserve. So all the traditional elements that you expect from Longines are also here at this price range, while fusing some of this finer crafts of execution as well. So this next watch, when it came out, I remembered immediately thinking, this looks like a more attainable Diver 300 meter from Omega, and you see it with the wave pattern dial. It looks really nice. This is the Ocean Star 39mm. So the Ocean Star has been a model family that has existed for decades from Mido and has existed in a variety of different capacities. You saw the tribute models that were really a look back to the past. You had the also Ocean Stars of the GMT family that were some of the most entry points for Swiss true GMTs on the market. This gave you more of the Ocean Stars twist on a mid-sized dive watch. So diameter at 39mm, thickness of 10.5mm, and lug to lug of 45.6mm with water resistance of 200 meters. You have the ETA C07.611, so traditional escapement, a nice 80 hours of power reserve, but this is that compact way and slim profile of getting this presentation of this wave dial pattern. So you have this distinctive black and blue gradient dial with these pronounced wave patterns that recall the Omega Seamaster Diver 300. At least that's what it screams to me. On that dial, you have the applied indices as well that are inset within the dial's texture for this unique look. It's like almost like watching some buoys on the water. But if you shoot light straight down and get very directional with how it is being approached with the light, it does have a very showy appearance compared to some other watches in its category. This can come off as cheap. If it was not something that was considered carefully, this could really land as tacky rather than elevated. Mido was thankfully able to do this and stick the landing. A brand that's been an absolute star when it comes to this idea of punching above its weight or delivering either complication or level of finishing and detail for the price, Frederique Constant. This is a brand that really specializes in this idea. It's part of their identity, and it still continues to this point. I think the Classic series is one of those entry points that also demonstrates this idea in an amazing way. Probably the best, maybe the Classic Index should be included here for just over $1,000. Very nice looking watches, but I think we want to look at the Classics Premier because I think it does a better job of driving this idea home. So Classics Premier is a watch that we've reviewed before in the past, 38.5 millimeters with its diameter. It's under $2,000 for its retail price, 11.3 millimeters in thickness, and a lug-to-lug just under 44 millimeters with 50 meters of water resistance and having the benefit of La Joux movements on the inside. Being a Citizen Watch Group brand, you have that synergy that's happening right there. Now, FC has many of these classically inspired models, and this is going to be one of the best representations of that. The Premier offers timeless design with that case size, but also the finishing on the dial is really where I want to call attention to. On it, you have applied Roman numerals offering great depth, as does that embossed woven guilloche texture at the dial center. You have Breguet style hands and the onion crown that adds a touch of elegance in the process. Very traditional in its idea of romantics and what the watch buyer might think as beauty, but does that take away from what the end result is, which is a very attractive looking package. On the back side, you have the La Joux movement, which isn't a bad looking movement for a simple type of time only caliber. Getting some basic finishes on the rotor as well on the central bridges. And I mentioned the Classic Index as another watch that's right at that entry point, just around $1,200 at the time of recording this video. Price changes happen all across the industry, so it might be different by the time that we edit this video. But just for around $700 more, you can get into this watch, and I think what you're getting under closer inspection, but also just with some of these extra details, really help and elevate what is being brought forth here. So our next brand is one that I have talked about more recently, just given the fact that, yes, in a 20-year window, more of this mall watch department store brand, but what they've been doing as of late, I have noticed, and I think other enthusiasts have noticed as well, because they started to focus more on adding additional features, but also just products that I think cater more to the enthusiast and what they would want. And this is probably the best example of that. Here is the Raymond Weil Millesime Automatic Small Seconds. So this is a watch that was responsible, along with others, in completely changing the way that I look at this brand. So let's go through some of the specs. 39.5 millimeter case diameter. You have a thickness of 10.4 millimeters, lug to lug of 46.3 millimeters, and water resistance of 50 meters. So nice dimensions, very wearable, but I think it was really this design that landed, and it even landed with the GPHG giving honors to this design as the Challenge Award winner. So the category for watches under $2,000 in 2023, this Millesime brought home gold in that regard. So I think that was part of the turn. But then you see these watches, you look at the variety that you have to choose from, there's a lot to like. And it's also a family-owned company. It was started in 1976, still independent, not falling underneath any larger group structure. CEO Elie Bernheim is the grandson of Raymond Weil himself. And if this is the trajectory and direction the brand is going, I am on board and want to see what they have coming down the pipe. You have this unique vertically brushed bezel, easy wearing dimensions, balanced, well-delineated sector dial design with small seconds display and a no date. They've also recently decided to have this be a broader selection to choose from with different colors available, with a dome sapphire crystal on top, and as mentioned, that reliable Sellita-based movement on the inside. But all right, guys, I did my video here today looking at some watches that are more luxurious looking than you might suspect. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe, hit the bell icon. Really do appreciate that. Are there some other watches that you look at and you've ever had this moment, the reverse of sticker shock? You take a look at it and you're like, oh, really? That's it? If you've ever had that situation happen to you, I know it doesn't happen that often in watches. We have this tendency where it goes the opposite direction. Leave a comment down below. I'd like to hear what you guys are thinking about when I mention that. In addition, definitely check out TeddyBallstar.com. TeddyBallstar.com is an authorized dealer for all the brands that we carry, over 35 brands. Every purchase from our website comes with quick and fast fulfillment, dedicated customer support, and a full factory warranty for all the products that we offer. But guys, thank you again so much for watching. As always, be well, and I will see you all very soon.